Hello, this is Rich Hart again, and thank you very much for joining the Rich Hart Show. Today with me, I have a very, very special friend, a very, very special guest. All right, Mr. Dez Thornton. All right, Dez, we've been rocking and rolling this world, okay, in many different ways, many different directions, and we became, I'm going to say, close friends.
Ooh.
All right, all right.
Whoa.
Closer, all right, close friends over the many, many years. Already, we worked together and done some really interesting work out there. But what brings you here today is the work that you're doing. Okay, things themselves that people need to be aware of. Individuals themselves, especially in today's business environment, as you're bringing the life of this concept called the contributor and the influencer, all right, to light. And there are individuals themselves that really need to focus on these two areas of expertise, all right, especially in the relations of business today.
Yes,
Okay?
of course.
So before we get into this whole thing of contributor and influencer, what is this all about? What is this whole idea of the contributor and the influencer from a business perspective?
Well, first I got to go backwards.
All right, here we go.
And thank you for referring to me as a friend and a close friend at that.
He's not. I pay him well, so that's without a doubt.
I appreciate that. And when I was stumbling into the speaking association and trying to get into this business, you were one of the first people that gave me a hand up and the opportunity to serve on the board. And so, of course, we're friends, but I also look at you as a huge business influence. And so thank you.
Oh, no, thank you very much. I appreciate
for having me here. So as far as this contributor influencer business, so over the last 5 years or so, like my working with leaders has led me to work with emerging leaders, which is a shift for me because I'm used to working with executives, but now I'm working with sort of key people in organizations who are looking to climb the ladder, if you will, or make their way into the C-suite.
Middle, upper management level individuals, folks themselves that are trying to get to the next step.
Yeah, okay, I kind of call it the rock stars or the all-stars of a business, people who you would look to for, future leadership positions.
Good.
And so in working with them in communications and executive presence, one of the things that I learned is it's really challenging for them, and probably one of the biggest mental hurdles is to go from a contributor to an influencer.
Hold on a second. Let's define that for our audience themselves. So what's the definition of a contributor?
So a contributor is someone, if you think about when you first started your job or you're at an entry-level position, like contributors are known for having the right answers, being a go-to person.
Have the information, source of information, contributing where they possibly can to hopefully get over a problem, concerns, solving an issue.
Yeah, so think about, if you work in a corporate environment or within a company or organization and something goes haywire and they're like, hey, go find Rich. Rich is the guy. Rich is the guy who knows how to do.
Run away as fast as you possibly can. I got you.
Rich is the guy who knows how to do this, right? And so, you develop a reputation, you develop an identity around being that technical contributor, right? So you have the right answers, you're the go-to person. Then on the other side of that is becoming an influencer. It's like, how do you shed that identity of, hey, let's go to Rich for this.
Right.
And now you want to be a leader and you want
carrying the echelon.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's like, how do you let go of the rope of being that technical person to be an influencer to where you're shaping now decisions, shaping perception of the organization, that type of thing.
Good. So the reception of people themselves, seeing now these new concepts of the control, they're not new concepts. They're
not at all.
They're ideas, all right, that need to be implemented.
Yes.
Okay, on a greater scale.
Yes.
Okay, because there is a transition point between the contributor and the influencer.
Of course.
And some folks themselves may not make it out of the box of a contributor because that's the way they work. That's how they're hardwired.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's a transition point between the contributor and influencer, or individuals that want to be or are moving to be influencers.
Right. Yeah.
What's the change?
For me, it's really the mindset. It's all about mindset for these individuals. And like I said, the biggest thing is like, how do you let go of your technical abilities and then start to focus more on leadership? And I'll just kind of give you a perfect example of how I phrase this. So I define the technical contributor as being a person who has the right answers.
Right.
So if you look at it and say, okay, well, how does this person make it to an influencer?
Okay.
Their technical ability is still important to them, but what they're doing now is they're leveraging that in a different way.
Mhm.
So instead of just having the right answers, like, hey, go get Rich, he has the right answers.
Right.
But now Rich is involved in conversations with leaderships where he's also asking the right questions. And so you take the right answers with the right questions. And here's where the growth comes in. It's like, how do you take both of those and tell a persuasive story
Right.
of why we have to do this or how we do this certain thing, talking to leadership or talking to executives, stakeholders, and things of that nature. And what I found is the mental hurdle is really the fear, because a lot of times those conversations and situations are
Yeah, right.
unpredictable.
Sure.
You never know what you're going to get into. So if you're used to saying, hey, I can put my hand on this or do this way, but now you're in this space where it's just like, I don't even know what's going to happen.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I got to be able to respond in the moment. That's where the communication and the confidence part of that comes in.
It's funny. You said that it's a mindset, and for folks themselves to kind of chase that hurdle,
Mhm.
okay, or to jump that hurdle, there's a lot of motivation, internal motivation, and I believe
course.
motivation is a mindset.
Of course.
Through skills, knowledge, tools, techniques, and resources, people tend to grow,
Mhm.
already, and that's the influential.
I
There
like
you go. Takes 3 times, right? Influential part, already, are really now starting to make that transition.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does the resources themselves, those skills, knowledge, tools, and resource techniques themselves come into play from an influencer?
Yeah. So I guess, for me, I look at it as mastering the inner game.
Okay.
And the inner game is all about your confidence. And I believe, like, fundamentally, there's 2 things that if you're going to raise the bar with your confidence, that you have to buy into. One is this idea that, confidence is not a gift that some people are born with and
Right.
others not.
Sure.
Right. It's a skill, and it's something that the best leaders, the best athletes in the world, we all have to work to intentionally develop. So that's one. The second thing is that confidence is a skill. So in the same way that, you're able to be a technical contributor, you have the behaviors and all those types of things to help you in that way, like, that's available to you when it comes to confidence as well. And what I find more times than not is people will, let's say they'll participate in a meeting. They'll do something that is a stretch for them.
Yeah.
And then the next time they have an opportunity, the second time they have an opportunity to do that, it's like they set their counters back to zero.
Right, exactly,
Like,
yeah.
it's like, I've never done it before. And the
Sure.
fear, anxiety that come along with all of those things, they kind of start over every single time. And so fundamentally, in order to shift your mindset to
Right.
how do I go from this, technical contributor to an influencer, it's definitely about mastering that inner game.
So the type of individuals themselves that you will see needing these types of concepts,
Mhm.
right? Who are the people themselves that the clientele that you work with that
Yeah.
really give you the opportunity to expand, all right, these ideas?
Yeah, what's interesting is, I think it applies to all of us all
Sure it
the
does,
time.
without a doubt.
Because we can always grow and get better. I mean, even the most senior leaders or the people who are at the top of their games in their companies and organizations, they can in fact benefit from this. But if we think about it in terms of a corporate structure, it's really the people who are like the next generation of leaders. So I kind of look at it as those people, I call them emerging leaders who are advancing leaders who are knocking on the door of the C-suite. They are probably came up through the ranks as technical contributors. Now they're starting to have more responsibilities. They're leading people.
Right.
The senior leadership may be giving them opportunities to be in front of huge stakeholders and things of that nature. And they're trying to find their footing in terms of how can I show up confident, authentically, in those situations, connect with people, and just also get my message across. So to answer your question in 2 words, emerging leaders.
Emerging leaders. And I think we're seeing a lot of change already in today's economic structures and things of this nature.
Of course.
Okay. We're seeing a lot of unbalance
Mhm.
already, and we're seeing a tremendous, like I said before, a tremendous lot of change out there already. People themselves don't like change
No.
for the most part. All right. And from the influencers standpoint, these folks themselves, they engage the change. They want to see the new. I tell people all the time, I'm that close from being that far away every day. But I think that the fact itself, I'm still continuing to learn. I'm still climbing, all right, through wanting to be the best influencer that I can possibly be.
Mhm.
How do you work with individuals themselves that are always on the, let's just say, the color code of crimson red personalities driving, okay? And then, or those individuals themselves that are just, I'll wait for it to come, already, and those individuals that really want to take charge.
Yeah. So, it's interesting you asked that question, Rich, because I always say, like, if we were to look at, confidence as a continuum, I would say like 20% of confidence is given
Okay.
meaning that it's available to you in your job or whatever your situation. People
Right.
open the door, or the structure or the setup is built, for you to have like 20% of success, but the other 80% is up to you,
Imagine
right?
that.
And that's the part, and that's the part that you're talking about. And I believe that most people, well, I can't generalize in that way. Some people tend to think that, hey, I'm just going to sit back and wait for this opportunity to happen. And I think the key difference between people that are good at whatever they do and people who are great at what they do believe that confidence is taken. Right? They just step up, they do the thing, they're willing to make the mistake and recover and learn from
Yeah,
that
right.
mistake. And a lot of times, as you said, that's something that can be very, very uncomfortable.
In those mistakes themselves, we've learned from those past mistakes. I've learned tremendous amount out there. The second area of self that we've talked about several times themselves is controlling ideas
Mm-hmm.
already, and the whole concept of this controlling idea. What is this about?
Yeah, so the controlling idea, in short, I had a mentor when I first got into the speaking business, and he used to always say, Dez, if it's foggy in the pulpit, then it's foggy in the pews, right? Meaning that if you don't know what it is you're talking about, how can
Right.
you reasonably expect the people on the other side to understand you? And
Sure.
how can you persuade them? And so this whole thing around the controlling idea is, no matter what your message is, if you're talking to one person, if you're talking to 10,000 people, how can you quickly, systematically, go through a process that will make sure you know exactly what it is you want to talk about? And in essence, that's the controlling idea. And
Right.
there are several parts to it. I'm not sure if you want to get into those, but
Let's
I'm
talk
happy to
about a
share.
couple of parts, because I think it's extremely important. Already, we talked about how this change has got to take effect,
Mhm.
for people to make, or let's just say, to contribute to the difference.
Right.
Alrighty, and so let's talk about these. What are some of these steps that need to go into play?
Sure. So just imagine you have to give a presentation, or either you have a conversation with someone one on one.
Sure.
And so where I always suggest you start is to ask, thinking about your audience, because of course, audience is always most important. But it's like, what do they currently believe
Right.
about what it is you're going to be sharing with them?
Listeners' views,
Right.
biased, unbiased opinions.
Of
all
course.
right?
And then
The process,
secondly,
thought process,
yeah, and secondly is how are they behaving as a result of that belief,
which
right?
behavior.
So
Mhm.
if I'm about to come and talk to you and I want to persuade you of something, I'm going to ask myself, hey, Dez, what does Rich already think about this? And then what is he doing right now?
Right.
And I sort of consider that to be the start line. So I'm like, okay, Rich is here. Now, if I'm attempting to persuade you or communicate something to you, the next thing I need to know is like, where do I want to end up
That's
with
right.
Rich?
What's the
So
final
what's the
result?
finish line?
What's the end
So
result?
what do I want him to believe, and how do I want him to behave at the end result of this? And so I believe, and the experience has taught me, that most people, they just write down stuff and they just start talking,
That's right.
with no thought at all about
Right.
the audience on the other side.
Sure.
So when you have that start line and you have that end line, now the communication, the presentation that happens in the middle is this bridge that you're going to build to get Rich from where we
Right.
started
Exactly.
to ultimately where we are.
Sure.
And just really quickly, I'll just say, so there's 4 elements in that. So I would ask the question, what do I want Rich to know?
Okay.
Right? So what's the big idea thing that I want Rich
Sure.
to know?
Exactly.
One thing that people often forget is, how do I want Rich to feel? So do I want you to be excited? Do I want you to feel like you got to act urgently? Do I
Right.
want you to be pissed off so that you'll be ready to do something? But a lot of times people leave out the emotion. And I'm not suggesting that you have to say, hey, Rich, I want you to be pissed off. I want you to be excited at the end of this.
I can do that all in one sentence.
But it's the way that I put it together that's going to bring that to you, right?
Right.
So what do I want you to know? How do I want you to feel? What do I want you to believe is possible? And that speaks to the future, because if I'm trying to persuade you, I want you to say, well, Rich, if you did this way, like, this is how it could
That's right,
potentially
yeah.
benefit you. And then the last thing is like, what do I want you to do? Like, what action do I want you to take?
Final,
What's a
yeah.
baby step
Sure.
that can move us forward from where we are? So if people just go through that simple process in conversations, or if it's a presentation, and make sure that you're clear in your mind what you want to communicate, and then it dramatically increases the odds that you, one, connect with your audience, and then secondly, persuade them.
Without a doubt. Des, we're reaching out to today's leadership. Generations come into play, how individuals think, act, grow, or they build this relationship into the leadership. In our world, in the speaking communications world, there are a ton of people themselves. What do you speak on?
Yeah.
Leadership. All right. Okay, I got that. All right. Let's chime that down. All
Right.
right. Let's take that off of 10,000 feet and bring it down to 200 feet. Because whether you feel that leaders are made or born,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there's an innate ability, all right, to work and develop relationships with people to get people to do things that they would not normally do
Right.
inside this leadership world.
Yeah.
Okay. How does this leadership work with you?
Well, for me, Rich, I would say the biggest thing for me is I'm always thinking about like the other person first, just as
Okay.
I mentioned. So thinking about the audience and how do they feel and what are they doing as a result of whatever it is I'm going to be communicating with them. And then I would say like the second thing, one thing that's really huge, we talk about like new generations and in the workforce and things of that nature, like the tell and command style of leadership. Leaders who are leaders from the throne, like you're going to do this because I said do it.
Yeah, right.
It's like that no longer exists anymore. Like,
Doesn't.
yeah, the
It's
younger
so
generation
passe. Right.
don't respond to that at all. So what I like to say is like you have to be inclusive. Think about circular leadership, and one of the things that I often talk about is like how do you lead with questions? And what I mean by that is it's like in today's world you have to build consensus. So let's say like you're the leader of the studio here, or you're the leader of some corporation. You already know what decision you want to make, and you have the authority completely to make that
Sure.
decision. Old school would say, all right, folks, come in. Hey, here's what we're doing.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And most people are going to fall in line.
Yeah.
Today, it's more of, hey, this is what I'm considering.
Contributory.
Yeah, I want to hear from everybody else. What are your thoughts, feelings about this? I'm going to take all this into consideration. And then ultimately, you make that decision.
Right.
Same thing you were going to do from the beginning, but it's that middle step of consideration that's there. And what I find is the best leaders are able to separate themselves from other leaders just because they give like that level of consideration. One quick point about this, Rich, is a lot of times today we put speed and efficiency over meaningful engagement.
Yeah. Right.
So the example that I just gave you is like, hey, I got to do this fast. I'm going to go in there and tell them this is what we're going to do and this is
Right.
what we're going to do, as opposed to slowing down, engaging people and making them feel a part of the process. And then ultimately you still get to the result, but the difference being is that you have buy-in from
Right.
your
Exactly.
people. Yeah.
I think in sharing the load is extremely important. Diversifying skills and talents extremely important. Alrighty. I'm the guy itself, and you know this from me itself. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know.
Right.
Okay, I don't know. I'm the guy. Will tell you. I'm the leader. Will turn around and say, I'm not quite sure. Let me check it out.
Right.
If you're going to give me a proposal, you're going to tell me this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to chew on it for a little bit.
Right.
All right, and I'm going to find out. Okay, where's the benefits? Where's the end? Where's the beginning, middle, end? What's the result?
Right.
Okay, but I think what you're saying out there is working contributory with those parties in play. Okay, really not only helps with the buy-in, but it helps with the long-term already production and profitability value.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, in every company, it all goes down to the people.
It is people. It is about people.
Yeah, I mean, the largest companies in the world, it comes down to people. And so if you're not able to persuade your people, that's going to affect your profits. That's going to affect everything else. And so that's why, in my world, working with leaders, I'm trying to, one, help them have the confidence in themselves to show up authentically, to connect with others. But the second part of that is how do you interact with other people? And just being empathetic, which is a word that we probably don't hear too much in today's society, but being empathetic to other people doesn't mean bowing down and doing every single thing they want, but it's just like having compassion, asking questions, showing interest, in what other people are saying. Like a simple example that I always say to leaders is just to play back what you heard. So if you and I were engaged in something and I say to you, hey, Rich, so I heard you say blah, 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 blah. Right. So now I'm just signaling to you, like, I listened to you.
Sure. Right.
I heard you say this.
Right.
Now let's talk about this. And it's just that small thing can make a huge difference.
Sure
right?
It does. Sure it does. I think today's leaders, Dez, I think they're fighting between ignorance and arrogance.
Okay.
Okay. And it is. It's a fight out there for folks themselves and how we're receiving their information, how they're taking the information for process, how the process themselves is now allowing them to what? Constitute a decision, all right, to go forward, all right, in order to manage the level of expectations for business
Right.
and their people.
Right.
And I think as we bust into AI world and as we bust into easier ways, people love easy.
Hmm.
They don't like change,
Right.
and they want the old drive-through method. Okay, give me. Yeah, if I need to supersize, I'm going to supersize that. Okay, so how do we deal with leaders themselves that are really having a tough time? Okay, getting over some of the additional outside hurdles. All right, you're talking about working with people's beliefs, their internals, what they seem to feel and else. What about some of these leaders themselves that are still arrogant and ignorant? Okay, and really still compiling already too much onto the people as an authoritative figure.
Yeah. So I guess one thing, fundamentally, it comes back to just understanding, being able to connect and engage with your people. But what I would say, as far as like the technology specifically, is like leverage the young people that you have in
Without a
your
doubt,
organization,
100%.
or leverage
100%.
the people who understand these things. Like look at those as opportunities for them to do something they're comfortable with, something that they probably like,
Right.
and be able to teach, people in the workforce who don't understand. Like, interestingly, right now, we're at a point where we have more generations in the workforce than we've had ever before,
Sure.
right? And we got people who are, traditionalists in the workforce, where there were people who just glad to have a job, and if you had to send them a message, you could send them a pigeon, right? And they would know to take it from the pigeon. But then, you got Gen Z and, all those younger people in the workforce who use Slack and text and do all those types of things. And so, one of the challenges for, those types of leaders is, I think, that you can, engage people just, where their natural strengths are. And a lot of times there's hesitancy to do that because people are young, in many instances, but I think it's an opportunity.
It gets back to the power of numbers
Hmm.
and utilizing the skills, natural tools, talents, and resources of those individuals that bring it to the table.
Yeah.
And to really listen to those folks themselves, especially. And it really doesn't matter which the generation is, all right, or how the generation is making an impact, all right. But I'm thinking itself is what's the contributory factor of that talent and that skill, and how is going to help with the productivity and profitabilities of that business organization or help within the leadership. All right. I think leaders are very, very tough to shed, all right, all that they think their responsibility falls on them, and to open the door itself to acknowledge more people coming in and sharing the load.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And if you just think about it, it makes sense. It goes back to the, classic two heads are better than one, right? So if you got 500 heads in your organization and you add a new young one, whatever ideas and things they have and bring to the table is going to make the whole better. One of the things that I often see just in terms of leaders and talking about that point is that, a lot of leaders today, or leaders who are established and have been around for a long time, they kind of keep their personal life and their professional life separate. And
Yeah.
when you and I came into business, it was like your personal life is over here, your
That's right.
professional life is
Exactly.
over here. The two shall never meet.
Yeah. Right.
But the way that the world is today with social
A little
media and
different.
just
Yep.
young people in general, it's different. And so it's almost to a young person, if you're not showing a personal side of yourself and something you're interested in or something like that, they feel like you're holding back on
Or
them.
you hate them.
Yeah, exactly. Or you hate them
No,
totally.
I don't
So
hate you. Eat cake.
yeah. I mean, so so you have to be willing to be vulnerable,
That's right.
and I think that's the whole key, and that for leaders, it solves a lot, but it's kind of that, I won't say a double-edged sword, but it's the balancing act of, like you said, that red alpha type that's
Yeah.
going
Right.
and taking it.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you're saying, well, you got to be vulnerable in order to connect with these
Right.
people.
Exactly.
And I think finding that balance between the two, and it's different for every person in terms of how they would do it. But to me, those are the leaders who are emerging now, and I think will continue to stand out in the future where
Sure.
they're able to connect.
For those individuals themselves, peeling back that proverbial onion. All right,
Yes,
and defining itself, there is a juicier part of that onion on the inside. All right,
of course.
to really help shed and make things great and far easier transition,
Right,
without a
right.
doubt. So, Des, one last thing that you would like to leave with our audience today, from the leadership side, the principles and practices. We talked about a couple of those ideas that you're bringing into the network. I think today's leadership really needs to hear what you have to say from that strong point of really developing the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Okay.
Of course, of
And
course.
so what's that last thing itself you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Ah, man, if I had an opportunity to leave a last thought, with with leaders.
This won't be the last thought.
my
But,
last thought here
uh,
would just be, I mean, it's really about two things. It's about how you show up, so being confident, authentic, and then it's how you interact and engage with other people, and always thinking about those two things and the balance that exists between those two things. To me, is what's most important. And if you get too far and thinking about yourself, then that's not bad. I mean, that's going to be bad. If you get too far and just caring about other people and you're not, you let go of the wheel, then that's not good either. So I think just having a balance between those two things, because when it all boils down to it, it's about influence, right? And trying to get other people to think and behave in a manner consistent with what you expect. And to the extent that you can balance yourself as well as how you interact with others,
Sure.
that gets you to influence.
I think it's very important. You had brought an item up, and you were talking about business and personal and keeping those aside. Alrighty, and it's great to have other aspirations. It's great to have other avenues that people drive into and things of this nature.
Right.
Already, before I do the studios and the companies and the businesses. And yeah, I do take a vacation every once in a while.
I feel like you're about to make me walk my talk here. This feels like it's slanting toward something personal. Okay.
Not at all. But why is it so important to bring personal already into your relationship? All right, from the business and the leadership side. All right. Granted, the generations themselves are really pushing that concept through. Okay, but you have a personal side to you too as well.
I do have a personal side, believe it or not.
And there is. All right, and with the personal side, you're an enthusiast. All right, when it comes down to automobiles.
I am.
All right, and working with that.
Yeah, I may be a nut. I don't know.
No,
enthusiast.
No,
I may be a nut.
That's why I said enthusiast. All right.
I appreciate that.
Nut is a very simple way of saying out of control.
Yeah, because
right?
I make irrational decisions for sure. So I would definitely have to.
Well, your wife called me this morning and I says, "Could you please talk about?" No, I'm joking. But I think that the fact itself is that they're bringing some of that side in. And I think we mentioned before, so people could be so guarded.
Yeah,
all right? And
absolutely.
we as speakers, presenters, and communicators themselves, it's very important to drop that guard.
Yeah.
And very important to be real.
Of course.
Genuine and authentic from a personal standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So let's cut to it.
All right. Here we go.
Let's cut to this, because I think it's important that your viewers know you and the viewers themselves know you from a different side.
Yeah.
All right. You're enthusiast in what? The automobile industry.
Cars.
Love
cars.
Cars.
Ever since I was a kid, playing with cars, trucks. I would practice parking cars. I was my uncle.
Practice parking cars.
Yeah, I mean toy cars. I
Mine's
practiced
in the back. That's
parallel parking toy cars. It's always been a thing for me. I sneak cars in my book bag to school. That type of thing. So for me, a connection point is you start talking cars, like my antenna immediately goes up. And what's interesting is, in a business environment, just having small talk with different people, before a meeting, talking about how to connect and influence others, you'll find that a lot of people have similar interest or something that you may be able to tie, to. And that's the thing that I always say, like, for me, I either want to put people's minds in neutral, meaning that, okay, they're neutral and I can now start to make my case for whatever it is, the case that I want to make is, or, so I'm a car nut. And I don't know how much more you want to know about that, but I'm willing to leave it there.
I think only for the leadership and everything that we've talked about today itself and climbing in, there is a personal side to everybody. And I think it's extremely important that people execute or actually let the guard down. We talked about peeling back the proverbial onion.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to laugh.
Of
I think it's good to enjoy. I think it's great to have an opportunity to engage with your workers, engage with your folks themselves, and those folks themselves knowing a little bit about what you do, how you do, why you do what you do.
Yeah, of course. I think we've deluded ourselves in the past to think like we're one-dimensional. Like I'm only a business guy, and I eat, sleep. Here's a quick comparison, Rich, that people might be able to relate to. So imagine like back in the day when you were in school, and this happened to me one time, and I saw my elementary school teacher in the grocery store. And I'm like, oh my God, like she eats food, she shops. It's just like, what is she doing here? It's like my mind was blown. I couldn't believe it. And I'm looking at my mom. It's like, I can't believe Miss Moore is in the store, and my mom's looking at me like, okay. But I mean, essentially that's how we came into business, right? It's just like the CEO or this person is this person and they go to sleep that way, they wake up that way. But as we know in the world today, hey, the curtain is open and we know that we're multi-dimensional people. And so I think in closing here, it's just like you can use that to your benefit
Without
to
a
connect
doubt.
for sure.
100%. Folks themselves, I'm talking with Dez Thornton, all right, Mr. Business Entrepreneur, Mr. Leadership and Man of Development, all righty, helping people themselves get from one place to another, all righty. Des, how do people reach you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And on LinkedIn, I'm at Dez Thornton.
Okay.
Pretty easy to find, except most people leave the N out of my last name. So there's
Okay.
2 N's in Thornton. So think about it like a thorn in your side.
Got it.
And then Thornton. And certainly, I'm happy if anybody reached out there.
So, Des, it's been my honor and distinct pleasure to bring you in, alrighty, and so we can talk about this contributing influencer and how the game changer is setting the tone, already, how leadership is really developing a different direction, all right, going forward in the future. Again, one more time, how do people get a hold of you?
So it's Dez Thornton with 2 N's. So thorn in your side, Ton. And Rich, I thank you just for this opportunity to get the word out. I've always held you in the highest regard.
Thank
and so
you.
it's a pleasure to share this time with you.
That's without a doubt. Des, thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Again, guys, thank you very much for joining this show, Rich Hart Show itself, and we look forward to seeing you on a next episode. So thank you. God bless. Safe travels, and we'll talk to you soon.